We formed really in '83, late '83. Fernie and I early, and then the band, when it was complete, it was like late '83, and then by '84, by June, we had a set and songs together, do shows. And Fernie and I, we met at the old Waldorf. On Monday nights, they had something called Metal Mondays.
At the time, I was a guitar tech for a local band called Head On.
He's a roadie for the guitar player.
And that is where we both met.
And we just randomly met, and then we just started hanging out.
Through the journey, we met Todd Crew, and we got along super well. Todd was just right with us. He just wanted to do what we were doing, and he was super happy. So having a bass player, wow, that was great.
And at the time, Ron and I were jamming together with another friend of ours, Brian, and then that kind of fell apart, and Brian and I were still kind of hanging out, but we didn't really have a band. And then Vern and I remember we were actually at his house. Vern was playing through his Marshall. And Brian left the room. He goes, "We should start a band." And I go, "Yeah, let's do it."
Then came the process of actually trying to put a band together.
And that's what we did. We just started hanging out and throwing ideas together. And that's when I said, "Well, I know a drummer." And he knew Todd. And we started jamming. And Todd goes, "I know a singer."
Billy and I had I would say it's a pretty magical connection. We had a lot of the same music that we liked. We got along. We were good friends. And we realized maybe we can do our own band.
I think it was right after we stopped playing together and doing that, whatever band that was we were doing. And then Fern and I were building a band, and he knew Todd, and I knew Ron, so it was kind of like...
I remember spending weeks and weeks in Tiburon at Billy's mom and dad's place, and we were just listening to music, and it was there. That was the genesis of the band, because it was there, I remember specifically, formulating and writing all the early riffs, Billy and I, of the first Jetboy songs. I think one of the first things we ever wrote was "Don't Mess Up My Hair." Car sex, things like that, all the things that we weren't doing. There was one guy named Ben Redfern who was a good friend of Billy's, who played the drums, and he kind of would hang out with us, and I think he was the original pre-Jetboy drummer, and I don't remember what happened. I left that in Billy's hands. But then one day there was Dirty Ronnie.
Ron came in and Todd came in, and after that Todd said, "I know this singer."
So Todd was the guy who brought...
Todd was the link to Mick,
right?
Which was actually their girlfriend, Todd's girlfriend Jean, and Mick's girlfriend Sheila were good friends, and that's kind of how
I see
that came into play. Funny enough.
So at that point we had the four of us, and through Todd and his friends, they kept saying, "Hey, there's this kooky dude who's a great singer. He's got a great look. He's got a real attitude." And I'm like, "Great, that's all I need."
And it's true that we first did meet him in the alley of the Mabuhay. He was, face down, pissed drunk in a pile of piss in the middle of the alley, which was right next to the Mabuhay and the On Broadway, which is on top where everybody hanged out, Piss Alley and all that. And they're like, "No, he's a great singer." We're like, "Okay, great. Well, we'll try him out."
I had kind of jumped from the punk scene, and then I started getting into, like the English metal scene, Motorhead and Saxon and those kind of bands. And I started singing in a band called Sweet Evil. And I was still hanging out at the old punk haunts, the Mabuhay and On Broadway and stuff, that whole Broadway scene. My girlfriend at the time was friends with this girl Jean, and her boyfriend was Todd Crew. And Todd actually came to audition for my band, Sweet Evil. We practiced a couple times. Todd told me about, these friends of his that had a band, and it was way cooler than what I was doing.
So we met Mick a few dozen times along the way, and a lot, I remember him being blasted out of his head, passed out near the Mabuhay Gardens, partying, having a good old time.
There was many failed attempts at getting me to show up and audition for the band, mainly because at that time I was like pretty messed up with just partying and drugs and stuff.
And we got him to a practice.
They came after a horrible bender, and I was like wiped out at my girlfriend's house, passed out. I was supposed to meet with them, and they were just determined this time, and they just came, And my girlfriend let him in, and they literally like grabbed me out of bed, and I was just like, no, I'm sick, I'm not going. And I remember they just took me and threw me in the car, no shoes on. I was like so miserable. I was like, can't believe you guys are doing this to me. And I went to the rehearsal, and I just watched, you know. I just sat and watched, and the songs were together and sounded good, and lyrics started flowing through my head real quick, and it was just a vibe, you know. It clicked, and I knew from that moment I was in, you know.
The first time you showed up with lyrics, you had like 4 songs.
Yeah, done.
And that was it. I mean, you know, we heard the songs and we're like, dude, if you're into it, we're into it. Let's do it.
It was just obvious once we all started rocking together that this was going to be the band.
We thought it was cool. It was the whole glam rock groove thing, and we just hit it off. What he did is Billy and I and Ron, we literally had all the music. We were actually arranged Car Sex and Don't Mess Up My Hair as songs. No lyrics. We just kind of mentally said, that sounds like verses and choruses. Let's arrange it, put it together, solos, everything. So, you know, His Royal Highness Mick, he just was able to just walk in, listen to the tunes, and just kind of vibe what was going on and started writing those lyrics. And then that's the impetus for where we went from there, and that's the genesis of the band at that point. It's pretty simple.
I might be wrong, but I'm thinking it was at your buddy's party.
You're right. It's right. Actually, I think we had a Mabuhay gig booked, and then we did. My buddy he was doing a big. It was our year of graduating high school, actually, for Ron and I. So it was like some graduation. You know,
Yeah.
we're at a high school.
And it was
party.
there was a lot of people there. It wasn't like at his house. It was in a big hall.
It was at a hall on.
Yeah.
In the city somewhere, like off of Geary or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that the first show? Okay, it was a graduation party.
The first gig was at my best friend growing up into music and all that, you know, and skateboarding as a kid. He started throwing parties.
I remember it was like a high school party, and so it was good warm-up for our show at the MAB.
We did that, and we had our first club gig booked at the Mabuhay Gardens like 3 weeks later.
I was petrified because Frank Wilsey was in the crowd. And Frank was the guy that I used to roadie for, so I was like nervous because he's younger than me, but he was my hero because he was a prodigy guitar player. At 16 years old, he had his own band, and you know, I mean, it was unbelievable. I remember Frank was there, so I was a nervous wreck. And it was at the Mabuhay Gardens, which was a great club. It was so much fun. The vibe, the atmosphere was so San Francisco punk rock and roll. It was just great. And we had our first show there. We had a good crowd.
I wake up in the morning, run my fingers through my nails. My pillows full of hairspray and my hair is just a mess.
Early gigs were, I mean, complete mayhem, you know.
They're a load of fun, but just chaotic, just out of control. I don't know.
Nah.
We didn't even know what we were doing. You know, we used to use
No,
big
the
old
early
glad bags
shows-
for curtains and
I mean,
smoke machines and
Oh, that was awesome,
that
man.
was great.
There was so much smoke on stage.
So much smoke. You couldn't even see the band till the
Oh,
first
yeah.
song.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
We always had a good following from the beginning. We didn't really have to build that up. It was perfect timing for what we were doing. We were popular in the scene. And, you know, our shows, we always talked about this. Our shows attracted a huge variety of people. I mean, we had a lot of people from the punk scene, you know, the whole glam revolution of that time, the kind of the second coming was coming on strong. So, you know, we had glam rockers and metalheads and punkers, and you know, it was cool. It was a good variety of people. We always had good energy in our shows. We you know, we put a lot of effort into making these shows interesting as far as decorating the stage, confetti, balloons, streamers, you know, we kind of went the extra yard to make the shows interesting and fun.
I don't even think Spinal Tap had it that good. It was the camaraderie and the friendship, and what we were really striving for was amazing. In my opinion, it was the most fertile time of the band because we really wanted to do well and we really wanted to make an impact.
No, it was awesome. We were like, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, and and selling out these clubs on Broadway in San Francisco, it was a dream come true.
Yeah. We played, you know, the Stone. We had opened for Wasp and like Atom Bomb and, you know, a bunch of crap like that, and like some local bands like Roadrunner and all that were big at the time locally. A band like Roadrunner, they were like Head On. And then I think our friend Deborah Rosner, who was working with Poison, she booked us our first show in LA at the Roxy with Madam X and this band called Doll, and that was in '85. So it was like a year after we had like built a good fan base up in San Francisco. Playing LA, and that's when, you know, like when Fernie and I, before we had Mick and the band really together, we used to travel to LA with a friend of ours because she used to love Wasp, and so we used to drive down. She would drive for free, and we just, you know, sponge a ride down. And that's when we met Izzy and Axl when they were doing Hollywood Rose, and we were all into the same influences, and so we kept in touch. So once they got Guns N' Roses going, and we got Jetboy, we started swapping shows, and same with Poison.
So the scene in San Francisco back in the mid-'80s was really, really cool, to the point where bands like Poison and Guns N' Roses, who were doing well in Los Angeles, knew through word of mouth that there was a scene in San Francisco.
And so by '85, after that, we used to go down and do shows mainly with Guns N' Roses.
And of course, they were smart. They came to our shows, they connected with us, we connected with them, and we struck up a deal.
It was fun as hell.
That's where we did that devil deal, you know, sign on the dotted line with blood. You'd open our shows in the Bay Area, expose you guys to our crowd. We go down to LA, you do us a favor, and Jetboy, Poison, and Guns N' Roses era, that's when that took off.
Was that before or after you stole the bus?
That was, I think that was right before I stole the bus.
Well, you call it a bus, we called it rent-free living. I had nothing to do with this because it was beyond my scope, but Billy had brainstormed with a couple of roadies in the band. I know it was Andy in particular. They were able to somehow connect with somebody in San Francisco and get a 1955 GMC 30-some-odd foot beat-up. It was basically a hippie bus.
The story on that one was pretty hilarious because a friend of mine had bought it with a girlfriend of hers and her brother, and they were going to do a charting service, and obviously it failed. And so she goes, well, you could just have the bus. She goes, you don't need a key to start it. It's over on Alamany. So me and our roadie Andy go, well, fuck, let's go get it, you know? So we went in and started it up, and we're like, well, it's a bus, you know? And I told Andy, I said, well, she said we could take it. I said, let's take it back to my place and we'll fix it up and we'll use this.
It was pretty trashed. None of us were really mechanics, but somehow we, you know, got it together, got the engine running barely, you know, from stop to stop anyway, constantly breaking down. And we painted it white, you know, got some old house primer, painted it white. The windows were all broken out, so wood was cheaper than glass, so we boarded up all the windows. And we gutted the chairs out, and you know, put mattresses, and you know, it was pretty ghetto. But I mean, that bus, great times on that thing. It took us back and forth to LA. God, I won't say hundreds of times, but lots of times.
We would be driving down the road and go over a bump and the window falls out. You know?
That was our first trip.
Like, don't worry about it.
So we busted out the windows, put up boards, and turned it into, you know, this, you know, living room on wheels.
We took all the seats out. There was nothing but couches lying down the two sides of the buses.
Real couches, like house couches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we took it back to Marin County, and little did I know, it was reported stolen by the brother. And my parents' house was under surveillance for 3 days with this bus in front because they didn't know who had stolen it. Until somebody had stepped on the bus, they couldn't do anything. So I go out, you know, to go on the bus and start working on it. And next thing we know, I got sheriffs and cops knocking on the door going, you're busted. I'm like, what?
The bus still exists. I thought I saw it drive.
No, that's the ghost.
No, that's the ghost. Bobo was behind the wheel.
Oh, boy.
Bobo was behind the
Tell me,
wheel. Bobo bus.
And Andy Moraga was chasing it.
And the ghost of Jimmy Modern was sitting in the passenger.
Oh,
The bus hit him. Turns out the guy wasn't too bright. I go, well, buy it. And I said, all I need is the pink slip. I said, we'll give you like $50 a month, you know, and he was going to sell it for like $1,000. And I think we paid him $100, and once he gave me the pink slip, I said, this guy's an idiot. He just gave it to me with no written nothing. Once I registered, it was ours legally, so that was it. He made a few threatening phone calls and gave up.
With this great bus, we would like drive down to Los Angeles for shows. So we never toured or drove to LA in any kind of like a rental van. I don't know what was better, if the shows were better or the adventures on the tour bus. So when we would go down to Los Angeles and tour, we would take the band, crew, and entourage.
The bus alone that we had back then can be a definite great book in itself of stories. The crap that happened on that bus was incredible.
Well, it was more of a vomit hall on wheels. It's really what it eventually became.
We had strict rules against partying.
Yeah.
No partying.
No partying.
Nah.
No partying.
No, there was lots of partying. We got real handy with pissing into a 2-liter bottle, you know, because couldn't stop.
Andy was only 17 years old and did not have a driver's license, but a permit, was one of the dominant bus drivers.
Andy, who used to drive the bus became his little baby, and he used to love the bus.
In one of the many antics, Bobo had pulled off to the side of the road for all of us to like urinate outside as opposed to inside the van, or the bus.
He thought he was taking a shortcut.
And in the process, decided to take a shortcut out of there.
Little did you know, he was going down a tractor road off the side of I-5.
Went down a dirt road, and then we realized, oops, we're in the wrong place. We need to go back.
In reverse.
In reverse.
It's raining out.
It was raining, and we slid off the road into a big old patch of corn or something.
So we attempted to drive this bus backwards. And somehow, as the bus started to go backwards, it started to slip off the edge of this dirt road, and we realized we were in a cabbage patch. And it had rained the night before, so now we were stuck in this, the bus was stuck in a pile of mud. There's no way in hell we're getting out of here. I'm thinking, great, I'm fired before my career's gotten off the ground, we're dead. And it was middle of the night. It was middle of the night, stuck in the mud. We did everything. How about this one, kids? Here's a good one. We took the wooden planks from the drum riser and stuffed them underneath the tires, thinking that maybe that wood would grip underneath the tires and get the bus out of the mud. No. Instead, it just made the mud splatter all over us. The miracle of all miracles. I remember I'm the one that saw this. There was an overpass in the distance, and I glimpsed, and I thought I saw this tow truck. And for the life of me and one other person, I don't know who it was, ran as fast as we could toward this overpass where we saw this truck not too far from where we were. And sure enough, the guy was still sitting there, and it was a regular tow truck guy. He called one of the big monster trucks, and eventually this big giant truck moving tow truck showed up, hooked us up. We had no money, and so we wrote him a bum check. A bad check. I think we like took a piece of paper and put, Bank of America and signed it. I mean, the guy fell for and we handed him the check. That was $145 to get the bus out of the mud. But we got it out of the mud. I got to work late, and hell if I almost didn't get fired, so it was great.
We took out a gas pump at a gas station.
Yeah, that was me, I think.
Billy himself, he knocked over. Young Billy. He won't admit it, or maybe he did. Maybe he already did.
We actually went back to the gas station that I accidentally took out the pump, and it was duct taped together.
Yeah. We drove over a Ford Mustang.
That's right. Yeah. That were owned by illegal aliens in Silver Lake, California, and getting away with it. It was a blast.
And then we tried to outrun their buddy in another car. We were like, just take off. Well, they caught us, but turned out they were illegal, so there's nothing they could do.
With both of them.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I had no part of it. I, by the way, never, ever, ever touched that bus. I never drove it. I refused to do anything to any. I was not going to be responsible for the death of 18 to 19 human beings. It wasn't going to be on my conscience.
I remember every time we would pull up to like my mom and dad's house in this thing, and people would be looking out the windows, and my parents were like, "Do you have to pull that thing over here?" It was funny, fond memories of the old bus.
At the end, when we moved to LA after we got signed, our roadie Andy was way attached to the bus. He just loved it. And he drove us to LA and, take the bus, it's all yours. Here's the paperwork. And he ended up taking that bus all the way across country and back.
No way.
Yeah.
When we started out, we were a close family as a band, and I mean, Todd was, one of my best friends, just like the rest of the guys, like a brother, I knew him before I had met the rest of the guys in Jetboy. And, the guy was really a genius. He was accepted to Berkeley State before graduating high school. He was just a real smart guy. But through the whole scene that we got into with our music, he was one of the many that really kind of wound up idolizing people like Keith Richards and Johnny Thunders and I think he was a little bit shy, and alcohol and partying definitely brought him out of his shell, and he really fell into that whole swaggering kind of junkie drunk persona. And he did it well. It fit his personality. But as we progressed, you could see that like a lot of people, he wasn't the kind of person that could handle it. Some people can party and keep their shit together, and they know when to quit, and they know when to have a good time. And he was just one of those people that would always go too far. I mean, he would drink till he passed out and pee on himself, and he just couldn't handle it. He wasn't the kind of person to be able to handle extreme partying, and he didn't know better. He just went for it anyway. And when we moved to LA and suddenly there was all, we were baby rock stars, we were really coming up and getting our first taste of what it's like to be a rock star. And he, like I said, he didn't know when to quit. And he started partying heavily with the guys from Guns N' Roses, which our bands were real tight back then. And it's not anybody's fault, but I think it was clear to some of us earlier that he wasn't the kind of person that could handle it, and he needed friends to watch his back and put him in check from time to time. And they didn't know him as well as us, and those guys are like party machines, and they could handle it well. And he wasn't, and he tried to keep up with them. And he got a little bit more into drugs, he got a little more into dope. And that wasn't really our thing. I mean, we all partied, and I'm no saint, you know what I mean? We all played with needles and partied, but it wasn't really our thing. The fact of the matter was, his behavior was affecting us drastically. There was just time and time again where he didn't come through for us because of too much partying. It's like, come on, dude, all you got to do is be there. We've got a meeting at 10 a.m., you can party afterwards, whatever, but come on, just be clear-headed. We need to, come on, we're a team, we're a band, It was out of everyone's control. I mean, we did what we thought was right. We tried to help him. We got his family involved. We put him in rehab. He bailed on rehab right away. And, we were forced into a decision that we didn't want to have to make, which was to kick him out of the band and get a bass player in before it was too late. We were about to start recording our first record, He went downhill from there, and a few months later was dead of an overdose. And how do you live with that? I mean, how does anybody? I mean, Guns N' Roses lashed out at us, and we obviously had our own tripped out feelings and guilt, and like, God, what should we have done, and could, woulda, shoulda, coulda, But I think ultimately, you know, people have to walk their own path, and you can't, you know, you can't take it upon yourself. I mean, I feel like we did all we could, and we made a decision that was hard. Was it the right decision? I don't know. But what's done is done. And, you know, he was a great guy. I wish he was still around, and I wish that didn't happen. And it's an unfortunate event that happens too much. When we needed a bass player, and you know, there was talk of, you know, well, who do you want to get? And our manager suggested, like, well, you know, start from the top. Like, if you could have any bass player, who would you want? And the first thing we thought of was Sammy Alpha, because we idolized Hanoi Rocks. And we knew they weren't together anymore. And it was a long shot, but our manager found out where he was. I think he was in London or Finland or somewhere, but we tracked the guy down. As it turns out, he had heard about our band. We sent him a demo and offered to buy him a plane ticket to come to LA and check it out, and he was like, hell yeah, I'm down. So he came, met us all, rehearsed with us, and it was done. It was like that. You know, I think he was, you know, it was probably timing for him, timing-wise, and he liked the songs, and you know, it was a smooth transition. You know, I mean, it worked out great for us. We got real lucky.
Elektra, the connection with Elektra Records, was through a friend of mine I knew who worked at the Record Factory, which was a big record store in the city at the time. And she goes, oh, I know this guy Steve Pross over at Enigma.
We were selling out shows in San Francisco and LA. We were, you know, having the big LA bands like Poison and Guns N' Roses would come to San Francisco and open for us because we were a little bit bigger there. And we would go to LA and open for them because they were a little bit bigger there. And, you know, at that time we all, you know, the top bands of that era were attracting record company interest. So there was a few labels following us. Elektra was one of the ones that stuck with us. They kept coming to shows, offering their constructive criticism here and there. And, you know, they were really the ones that showed the most interest and came through and offered us a deal.
They came to see us play. We made a really strong effort to flyer and promote a lot of the shows. When we were in LA, sure enough, these record people would show up.
We kept in touch with him, and sure enough, he got a job at Elektra and signed us a year later.
So we signed our deal. They put up a buttload of money to record our first album. I mean, we used Tom Allom, who had produced Judas Priest and Loverboy and the first Black Sabbath album, and you know, he got paid a chunk of money, and you know, they spent a lot, and everything was first rate, you know.
I remember Billy and Billy pretty much, he put together the package and the logo. He came up with the original logo drawing, and we were able to send him a package in the mail. Nobody did that for us. It was just us, ourselves.
We did feel the shake on Elektra. It was set to come out a whole bit. And
it was right around the time that hip-hop and Run DMC and all those bands, that was the big buzz. And so the record companies were shifting toward that direction. And so what that meant is that certain bands were going to fall by the wayside. But that's what always happens in the record business. Then, now, before, and in the future. It's inevitable.
We did the record, high priority. The record was scheduled to be released, and I believe it had something to do with the head of A&R, who was, his ass was on the line because the label wasn't breaking any new acts. And Steve, who was our A&R guy, who signed us and the Pandoras, he got fired. So we got dropped on, it was the Christmas of 87. It was right over the holidays.
The entire West Coast offices, from the president to the A&R staff and everyone down, fired, gone. They cleaned house, restaffed, and reset it up.
And what's quite natural in the record business is that they can make executive decisions, and a band could have a record, or a group of bands could have stuff ready to come out, and for whatever, they may change a direction and shelve the projects for a particular time.
And they look at, you know, bands that they spent a huge amount of money on. It seems to me they didn't really do their homework, because if they would have seen that we were loved by the press, we were predicted to go a long way. But yeah, for whatever reason, they shelf bands like that left and right. It's a tax write-off, and they decided not to go forward with it.
And they decided, so well, let's just shelve us bands too and just get rid of the whole thing.
That's probably a dark period, if you ask me, because Billy and I and the guys in the band pretty much thought we were mentally prepared for anything that came our way.
So we found ourselves without a label right as we were, ready to go.
We were set, press was out, the advances, the whole bit. And the next day, within a week, Michael Goldstone, who was at MCA, he called our manager and said, I want to sign the band.
Now, if any of you have seen Spinal Tap, the movie really parallels band life and the music business characters to the T, because there really was all those individuals. From the managers to the A&R people to the presidents of the companies and everybody in between were absolute freaking characters in LA, truly.
Luckily for us, though, we were on fire at the time. We had labels interested in us. We had a little bidding war. We had 2 or 3 majors that were seriously interested, and we decided to go with MCA.
They were able to work something out and pick up the record from Elektra.
It went back and forth, and by the time we actually signed the deal, probably a year had gone by. They initially wanted us to record a new record under their direction, which we obviously didn't want to do. I mean, we just finished Feel the Shake. It was our first album. We loved how it came out. We were happy with everything, and we were ready to go. We were like, man, we're not going to start all over again. We don't want to lose momentum. We had already lost a bunch of momentum.
They put us in this songwriting mode.
That wasn't the fun part.
You guys go write songs for months and months.
That, to me, was the worst, because all we wanted to do was play rock and roll. We just want to play rock and roll and tour and play. And we had to wait.
Pulled off the road and go write another record.
And it was a struggle. As a matter of fact, we had nothing. As a matter of fact, we survived by the good graces of friends and fans who would, just take us in or help us out or hang out with us.
We came off the road. We had already been writing. We started working on tracks for Damnation. We put a lot more effort into pre-production for Damnation. Still to this day, when I listen to it, I'm really happy with how it came out. I think at that point we were at a higher level of musicianship. The guitar players were better, my voice was better, my range was better, our songwriting was more matured, and I think we recorded a great record.
I'm very proud of Damnation to this very day. I thought we did really, really well with that, songwriting-wise. So I still think that to be our best record, and I thought we were really writing well, and things were going super well.
By the time we came out of this songwriting, it seemed like we're in this tunnel. It seemed like everything had passed us by.
If you really think about it, I think that may have not served us well, because when we were on a roll and where we could have came out in a particular time, it ended up that we ended up having to wait.
We wrote a great record, we had great producers, the album was like a slam dunk hit album. We were up to 100,000 units or whatever, the first few months, and then it just, tours were slim and things just started slowing down. The last great thing we did was Cheap Trick.
We were on our first tour for Damnation. It had been out about 3 months, and we get a call from a record company saying, something's going on. We don't know what yet, but they're pulling you off the road. We had back-to-back tours. I mean, we had 3 tours in a row booked. So we get off the road, we go for a meeting at the record company, and the first thing you notice is, gee, where is everybody? Entire, empty desks, and MCA Records was a huge office space, huge label. And, the same thing happened again. We later learned that Sony Music came along and conglomerate takeover bought MCA. And, the same thing. When those takeovers happen, they don't say, oh, well, everyone's going to keep their jobs and it's going to be business as usual, we're just going to own it. No, they completely restructure the company. So once again, I think they have their accountants look at the bands that they spent a huge amount of money on, which we were one. And you know, you look at it and you're like, the bands that they kept were the lesser bands, but they spent less on them. So it was a no-brainer for them, you know. We'll see, you know, who knows, you know, stroke of luck, maybe one of them will go. But it was really foolish because we were so set to go. All they needed to do was not drop the ball, you know. And that's exactly what they did by pulling the plug on us.
I mean, I really think like the first record, we kind of got steered into this direction, which wasn't really us. I mean, the songs were ours, but they were like real polished down versions. Yeah. And real basic, you know. When I listen to the demos now, I'm like, wow, the demos were impressive.
You guys are the band with the radio songs, and so we got formulated.
Right.
And we didn't know what.
And with this first record, we're young.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't know any better. You know, we're like mixing our record when Appetite came out. And I think that record really changed what was expected of bands. You know, all of a sudden it's like these radio-friendly songs are like, you don't have to be radio-friendly to be on the radio. And we were just, well, ours is already recorded, you know.
We had high budgets for these two records. You know, if you think back now with the budgets, we could have literally sailed around the world for a year, you know. We should have just done it here in the studio and made it simple and took the money and run. So yeah, Damnation was an official MCA release done with them. That whole process was a blast. We were treated pretty well. We did all of it in Los Angeles. And that record came out, and there were some, you know, it got more exposure, and there was some rumblings going on, more so than Feel the Shake. So we really thought this is the record that's going to establish the band for us to continue, hopefully, to just continue to make records. I think we didn't know what was going to happen, and I thought the songwriting was better overall, and but the idea was to do what the bands in the 70s did. A lot of the record companies back then had developmental deals with bands where they weren't, you know, it wasn't like one record and if you didn't do well you were out. They had deals where they were able to do 5, 6, 7 records and slowly build, you know, their writing and their exposure. And we were hoping that we were going to get in on that, but I think those days, for the most part, were over. It was already a time where if you didn't make an impact with a single or first record, your career was in jeopardy. Now things started to really look hopeful, because now I remember we were practicing at SIR Studios, and now a real tour bus drove up. And I thought, ooh, what band is this? Who's here? They're like, no, that's for you guys.
Kix was the first tour. We were tight with the band Kix from having a relationship before we even did a record and got signed, doing shows, and they had their Blow My Fuse record coming out, and so I said to our manager, I said, well, let's go out with Kix. They'll be a perfect match.
They took us under their wing, and we did a few months, I believe, of shows with them. I'm not really sure how long. Before that, we did, oh goodness, the infamous Striper tour.
That was great. It was fun and funny, let's put it that way. And then we did Cheap Trick, which was like a dream come true, and then they pulled us off the road to do Damnation, the second album.
Depressed.
Depressed, bitter.
And I think we were all fed up with LA and the music business. So at that time, it was like, let's go back home.
Yeah, that's what we did.
And regroup and see what, you know, we can do.
I was extremely angry because I still had just a little bit enough energy to say, look, let's just stay in LA, regroup, write some more songs, and maybe we can get picked. Maybe we can, you know, third time's the charm. But for some reason, it was a democratic decision to come back to San Francisco.
We moved back home in '91 and honestly didn't really see or do anything with each other for nearly a year. We didn't even like break up or anything.
So whether that was the right move or the wrong move, who knows?
Then we got new management, and we attempted to shop a demo that we did, and really got nowhere. And basically bands like Nirvana and the whole Seattle thing was blowing up, and it was time for a change.
Yeah, the band ran its course, and again, the environment and the times can dictate something like that. I think heavy metal and Metallica and those kinds of bands were really making an impact. There was hip-hop now, grunge, the whole Seattle grunge scene was in full bore.
We weren't the only ones who got left out at that point. That whole era of the 80s was going into the new decade of the 90s, basically. Everything changed. It went from leather to sweaters.
The grunge scene started happening, and I think labels at that period were looking for the next big thing.
As most bands will do, you either stay the same and you stay to your roots, or you kind of evolve to see what's going on. And so the band got a little bit heavier. I think even the band changed the name.
We signed with Bill Graham Management. You know, we were still playing and still eager to do our thing, but you know, as timing would have it, we found out within the first year after that it was going to be hard to get signed because nobody wanted to pick up something that had already happened. Like I said, the labels were all looking for a new genre, the new thing, you know.
We tried to do the Jetboy thing. Ron ended up leaving the band, and Fern, Mick, and I kept it going actually as Jetboy with a different bass player and drummer, and it just evolved into Mind Zone.
So that was it for Jetboy.
And we had a few band members, but Billy, part of the core, Billy, Mick, and myself stayed together, tried to pull through. And there was a moment there where I think we almost came close to getting some kind of a deal as Mind Zone.
Which we just said, let's just change the name and go. We were all into Pantera and the heavy stuff, and attempted that, which was fun, and it was okay for a minute.
We both played a Kiss tribute show at some place, not 6th Street Rendezvous, but some other place on Fulton.
On Fulton, it was called Brave New something.
Brave New World.
Brave New World, there you go.
I was playing with this band, what would they call it? With Darby and Tom, what they called Big, 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 or something like that. That was actually a fun show.
That was a blast.
And Big, 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 we played Mr. Speed, and we rocked it up pretty good. And the drummer for Mind Zone, because he was in Mind Zone, they went metal.
Right.
They got rid of the Jetboy. We got to go metal. We got to do the Pantera thing.
Try to be Pantera.
Right.
And of course, I was already metal because I was in Exodus.
Sorry.
And
I was already.
it doesn't get much more metal than Exodus, right? And we played Mr. Speed, and their drummer Rick said, "Wow, that bass player is cool, man." And then I got a call like the next day from him, "Hey, you want to come jam?" Bill Frenzo went to guitar, and they were looking for a bass player. All right, I was in like 5 bands or something like that. So I went.
Butler and I just, after Mind Zone was done, probably the day we knew it wasn't going to continue, we said, let's start a rock band.
And I like Jetboy. It's fun to play. Music's fun. It's fairly easy, and we can rock out on stage.
Simple rock stuff. And
I like Mickey Finn.
And
Billy Rowe.
Of course, we were in a band together. He was in a band with Mick too. So.
I became a pseudo hockey player.
Pseudo hockey.
Well, and it was good. It was actually, I think sometimes it's important to get away from something for a period of time so you can get a good perspective, clean up your mind, and then just see where life goes from there. When you go through something like that, and then you come back down and it's all gone, it's very easy to say, hello, my good friend. Which is bad. It was evident to me that definitely wasn't the route to go, so that wasn't going to happen. I could have easily overdone it one night, stumbled out into the street and got cremated by a trolley or something. So, I mean, literally, it could have been any one of us.
When Cleopatra started showing interest, you know, I mean, I had kept in touch with Billy. You know, we were best. You know, he's like my brother, and you know, he had been fired up for a while about, you know, man, a lot of bands are reuniting, and you know, he started a Jetboy MySpace page, and he was like, man, you wouldn't believe how many people out there are into this. And he said it's not just old heads from back in the day; it's new kids that are just learning about this and they're totally into it. He's the one that first got me to start Googling Jetboy. And I saw all these sites, I mean, like, site after site after site with pages and stories, and I'm like, who are all these people that are, like, putting up a site, like, about us, you know what I mean? So I started going, like, well, maybe there's something there. I didn't really think that much of it.
Brian Pereira, really the owner of the label, he was always a huge fan of the band. You know, he used to work the door and do bootleg shirts to all the bands back in those days in the 80s. And he put out that Hollywood Rocks book, and it did well, and then he put together an audio companion, and he called me about a song, and then he was doing the release party, and he called and emailed me saying, I want Jetboy to headline. And I'm like, wow.
When Cleopatra started getting involved, we had put out a couple independent CDs, collaborations of unreleased material, demo versions of songs, and that kind of stuff. Paris Records, and I think that we did one for Cleopatra too, but they started getting on the idea. They put out the Hollywood Rocks book, and then the box set, and then they started talking about doing a documentary style movie, and yeah, they hit us with the idea of doing that reunion show, in which we were definitely one of the featured bands.
That was really weird because I had no idea what to expect. Billy had all this confidence that there was, we still had those same 3 fans from 1987. Mm-hmm. I go, no, they're dead.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. When Brian hit me up, I just told him, yeah, whatever. I said I could talk to anyone else, and I just honestly, I just kind of let it go. I didn't even pursue anything. He called me, emailed me, and I finally caught me on the phone, and I'm like, I'll call Mick and Fern, and if they want to do it, I said, I'm into doing it, but it's just not me, so.
And besides, every other 80s band is back together. Why not
Exactly.
Jetboy?
Why not? Everybody else is cashing in.
That was really the beginning of where we're at now, which I feel real excited about.
We got 2 weeks into where the show was coming up, and Fern called, he goes, we got to rehearse. And I'm like going, hey, you're right, we got to get going on this, because we all said, yeah, let's do it. Well, that was it.
But somehow we got together and rehearsed, and the songs just kind of came back, like a bad girlfriend. And we got things rolling. We put the set together. Mick flew up, spent all of 7 minutes working through the set, and remembered everything, powered out his vocals.
We had 2 rehearsals. We drove down to LA. And we just rocked it. And I remember, when we first walked into rehearsal, from the first song we went into, it sounded pretty fucking good, And there was a few friends and whatnot around, and everyone was just blown away by how they were like, I can't believe you guys sound so good, So I guess it is like riding a bike, you never forget, and we all got in the same room, and it was just magic again.
That was a really good show.
We had rehearsed 3 times without him, with just Fern and Mike, and actually Ron didn't do the first one. It was Paul, who was playing with Heartbreak at the time, and it was getting there and all that, feeling all right. But once Mick got there, he flew in at night, 10 o'clock at night. We did a late night rehearsal, and he says, fine, we'll rehearse, because we only had 2 days. And we did Feel the Shake first, and just the minute we went into it, it just, bam, it clicked. It just felt like you could just feel it.
All our old friends like Ricky Rackman were there, and I have to say, I was very, very surprised after 12 or 13 years that even anybody would even really remember. But they were all very supportive. It was a great crowd, and the energy was unbelievable.
I mean, the show we did at the Key Club, and we did the Cat House 20-year reunion this last October, and it's almost half and half. Half older people from the days, the old rockers, and then a whole new generation of 20-year-olds.
After the show, we had some merchandising set up at a little booth, and we went down to kind of sign autographs and sign CDs and stuff, and I mean, it was just, it was packed with people until they kicked everyone out, and it was interesting to meet, young kids and older heads, and even older people that didn't get to see us back then, but knew about us, and it was like now they got their second chance to see Jetboy, So yeah, that's really where I think we became aware of, there's something going on here.
I was shocked. I was actually very shocked afterwards. I'm like, wow, not bad. Billy was going, see, I told you. I didn't believe him.
But it makes sense. It's like time gap is right.
Yeah.
It's long enough where it's 20 years where people who had kids back then, their kids are at that age where they grew up on that stuff with their parents and stuff. Between Mick, Fern, and myself, they were, this band had, Jetboy had a chemistry of the certain members. And, when we played, it was just fucking huge. We went out on stage, you know, we had Ricky Rackman announce us, and we opened with Feel the Shake, and from the minute I opened the song with the riff, I just can tell that this crowd is here for us, and we got them, and we kicked ass. And it was so simple, it just all came back.
That reunion show that we did at the Cat Club was filmed. They're going to be putting out, it was scheduled to be a DVD, now it's going to be a full-length movie that they're going to release at art and music movie festivals. And so there's the whole series, the book, the box set, the movie DVD that goes along with it.
I guess it really led from that, because Brian said, hey, I'd love to, let's do another record and have you re-record Feel the Shake, or record 2 songs and like add it on and put it, you know, demos, and we'll do a DVD on the other side. And so we just like said, yeah, that sounds great, you know. So we didn't really do anything about it, and then come the next year we were negotiating, talking about it, and we got it pretty much rolling. So we booked 2 more shows, did our first show back in our hometown in like 15 years or whatever, and then we did an LA show, and then after that we had everything going to do this. And it's just basically the first show led up to this.
Billy says, you want to go in and re-record Feel the Shake and a Johnny Cash song? I said, sure.
And it led up to all kinds of ideas that we got going on of just
New material.
I mean, it's, you know, it's this
Possible touring.
Yeah, possible touring, you know, going back to Japan, and yeah, new record. You know, Mick and I have been strumming around with some new song ideas, and yeah, let's see where they go.
We're recording these 2 songs, which is a new version of Feel the Shake, and Folsom Prison Blues, which is a standard encore we played for years, never been recorded.
It'd probably be pretty cool to do a new record, you know, why not? It's been fun, no pressure, just kind of let's do what we're doing and not worry about a hit or radio or what we're gonna make and all that. Let's just go and have a good time, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
You know, we'll see where we can take it from there.
The band was big enough to be known, but you know, it wasn't as big as some of the others, but the name, we were next to all that, where I think a lot of people remember.
We'll see how it goes. I mean, me and Billy have already got a few songs that we're working on. I've been writing a lot of lyrics recently, and by all means, if it's possible for me to keep on rocking, I will do it.
The one thing that was with this band is like we grew up together. We were all young, and we were like a family. All our parents knew each other, and you know, so for us, it was a time and a place that was like, I don't think we'll ever forget, and it was like, it was special. It was like awesome. So just to be playing again, I'm sure for all of us, we'll be friends till, you know, we're buried 6 feet under.
We're aiming for the stars, and we'll be happy with what we get from here on out. We're just happy to be here doing this right now. This whole year has been the year of blast from the past.
Back in the 80s, it was all about having fun. And that's what's missing in music even today, is fun. That's what it's all about.
Those were wonderful times, great times, so much fun.
The 80s of that rock was probably the most magical and fun, one of the last magical and most fun times for music.
Tired of being cheated. I'm ready to rumble.